President Masoud Pezeshkian visited the headquarters of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization in Tehran this week, where he delivered a stark message of defiance to outside powers and reaffirmed the country's commitment to a civilian nuclear program. In that address, he declared, "We will rebuild and with greater power." He spoke as Iran's leadership faces renewed scrutiny from Washington, which has warned that any attempt to restart nuclear sites previously targeted by US forces will provoke new strikes. Tensions have escalated as the United States claims that facilities destroyed earlier this year were part of a weapons program, a charge Iran strongly rejects. Setting the stage, President Pezeshkian came to office in July 2024, in a move that had raised hopes for a thaw in Iran's relations with Western powers and progress in nuclear diplomacy. But since then, his administration has found itself locked into a difficult balancing act, on one hand affirming Iran's right to peaceful nuclear development, on the other resisting external pressure to dismantle or severely constrain its program. In his speech at the Atomic Energy Organization, Pezeshkian made clear his government's view that simply destroying sites would not stop Iran's development. "Destroying buildings and factories will not create a problem for us. We will rebuild," he went on to say. And the view that we went towards nuclear in order to make a bomb, I have always said this, if we rely on our brains and scientists, they cannot remove the subject of nuclear industry by simply destroying one or two things. And he added, "The work that you dear people have done here is all for the health, industry and economy of the country and to provide the ability to solve environmental problems." These remarks signal a clear line. Iran's leadership sees its nuclear infrastructure as central not just to energy policy, but to larger national development aims, and they view external strikes, past or possible future, as only temporary setbacks. Iran's stated aims and Western concerns, Pezeshkian reaffirmed in a recent interview that Tehran is not seeking nuclear weapons, but rather will pursue its right to nuclear energy and research. That stance echoes the religious fatwa issued by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, declaring weapons of mass destruction forbidden for Iran. Nevertheless, the United States and its allies remain skeptical. US officials contend that certain Iranian facilities destroyed in June this year were integral to a covert weapons program. Iran denies the allegations and contends that its nuclear program has purely civilian intentions. In June, when European leaders pressed Iran on transparency, President Pezeshkian told President Macron that trust in the United Nations nuclear inspectorate is broken inside Iran. The same week, Iran's parliament moved to suspend cooperation with the IAEA. Thus, the diplomatic environment is tense. Iran insists on its right to enrichment and research, while Western powers argue that unchecked progress could lead to weaponization and destabilize the region. The rebuilding pledge. In his address, Pezeshkian framed the rebuilding of nuclear facilities as an act of national resilience and sovereignty. He said, "We will rebuild and with greater power." The language implies not simply restoring previous capacity, but upgrading it. He added that efforts to disrupt Iran's scientific work would fail because we rely on our brains and scientists. The president also sought to shift the narrative away from weapons development and toward development goals. The work has been done for the health, industry and economy, and to provide the ability to solve environmental problems. By doing so, he attempted to recast the nuclear program as a civilian purpose engine, energy generation, medical research, environmental remediation. It is notable that he referenced the Western countries trying to spread around the world the idea that Iran is pursuing a bomb, and contrasted that with Iran's own religious and ideological prohibition on such weapons. The Supreme Leader issued a fatwa that we cannot go towards a bomb. Wider strategic context. The timing of his remarks comes amid mounting regional volatility. Iran is engaged in proxy conflicts, tensions with Israel, and a tense relationship with the United States, particularly over nuclear, missile, and regional influence issues. The spectre of renewed American strikes hangs large. Reports indicate that a previous wave of strikes on Iranian sites was triggered by US and Israeli claims about nuclear weapons development. In that environment, Pezeshkian's remarks serve both as warning and as positioning. He told his interlocutors, "Even to Iran, the hand of friendship and cooperation is open. I make deals. I'm good at it. I've always been good at it. And I know when they want. By framing his remarks this way, he signals willingness to negotiate, but on Iran's terms. At the same time, he noted earlier that he had always said destroying one or two things will not halt Iran's progress. That is a direct message to external actors. Select strikes may delay, but will not deter. Implications for diplomacy and regional security. The declaration by Iran to rebuild its nuclear facilities with greater strength raises a number of major questions. Will Iran upgrade its enrichment capabilities or build new installations deeper underground or beyond previous oversight mechanisms? Will Western powers respond with renewed sanctions or possible military strikes? The US, in statements attributed to former President Donald Trump, has warned of fresh strikes if Iran restarts previously targeted facilities. How will this affect the already fragile regional security architecture? A more capable Iranian nuclear infrastructure profile would intensify concerns in the Gulf, in Israel, and at the IAEA over verification and breakout risks. Could this declaration be a negotiation lever, signaling Iran is willing to advance, thus seeking greater leverage in diplomatic talks to lift sanctions or secure economic relief? Will Iran's claims of peaceful intent gain credibility if it upgrades its facilities and remains under IAEA safeguards, or will that damage trust further, given Tehran is already accusing the IAEA of destructive conduct? Objective assessment. While President Pezeshkian repeatedly emphasizes a peaceful civilian program, several red flags remain. First, Iran's trust in oversight mechanisms is eroding. The president's comment that trust in the UN nuclear inspectorate is broken suggests disengagement from the verification framework. Second, the spectre of military confrontation remains real. Whispers of US or Israeli plans to strike are persistent, and Iranian officials are clearly preparing for escalation. Third, the rhetoric of rebuilding with greater power, while ambiguous, could signal an intent to expand enrichment or accelerate timelines. On the flip side, this may also reflect a strategic posture. By publicly committing to peaceful purposes and seeking cooperation, the hand of friendship is open. Iran might be attempting to frame itself as a responsible actor being unfairly constrained by the West, thereby increasing diplomatic pressure and gaining bargaining strength. What to watch for next, whether Iran issues a detailed roadmap of new nuclear facility construction, enrichment levels or locations, and whether those steps are reported to the IAEA, whether IAEA inspectors regain or lose access to key Iranian sites, and whether Iran allows new transparency measures or further restrictions, how the United States and its allies respond. Do they issue fresh deterrent threats, impose more sanctions, or seek fresh negotiations? Whether Iran follows up the rhetoric with concrete actions such as uranium enrichment beyond previous limits, production of advanced centrifuge models, or relocation of facilities underground. The reaction of regional countries, especially in the Gulf and Israel, will they accelerate their own preparations, invoke collective defense mechanisms, or seek new arms purchases? Whether diplomacy is revived, talks between Iran and major powers, US, EU, China, Russia, over a new nuclear deal, or whether the escalation path deepens. President Masoud Pezeshkian's declaration that Iran will rebuild its nuclear facilities with greater power comes at a fraught moment. On one hand, it highlights Tehran's determination not to be permanently set back by strikes or external pressure. On the other, it adds a fresh layer of uncertainty to nuclear diplomacy and regional security. With trust in oversight institutions already critically low, the risk is no longer just a breakdown in talks, it is a slide toward confrontation. Whether the next chapter will be one of negotiated restraint or renewed escalation remains open. In the weeks ahead, the world will be closely watching. Will Iran rebuild and upgrade in a way that triggers serious alarm? Or will it offer transparency and incremental progress toward a negotiated settlement? The answer may define the contours of Middle East security for years to come.